Hello everybody, my name is Dylan and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a data saving system for Roblox. Now for those who aren't familiar with DataStores, DataStores, as the name might suggest, store data. You can save any data, retrieve any data, obviously not like functions or instances. Yeah, so that's what DataStores are for those who don't know. And you can see here I've set up a little example. You have a little button here that the player can press, and this is just a little label saying how much cash you have. So you can see in the client scripts, when the event is, when the button is clicked, it fires an event to the server. Then obviously the server checks if the event's arguments tell the server to give some players some cash. So there are several ways to approach data stores. You could make it so it retrieves a key every single time. Well, you retrieves a key from a data store service every single time you ask for data store to retrieve that key. That could be met with a lot of data delays. And also you could go over your limits on data store requests. So obviously there is a limit to the amount of data store requests. You can do it in, I think it's a minute. I'll leave a Roblox wiki link down below detailing the limits. So you should pause now and then just have a look at the limits so you've got a good idea. So the method that we're going to be using today is a data caching system. So if you were to say index a key for the first time, obviously that would have a delay because it's getting it for the first time, but then it will store it in an internal table where you could then index that key again, and it would return the cached value. And if you were to try and set it, it would set the internal table. And then every, I don't know, you could be every minute, every 2 minutes, it will also save that to the data store. So we'll do this in the style of a player data saving module. So this could only be required from the server. So you could put it in server storage, and you can name it data module. So we'll do usual stuff. Now, here's what we'll do. We will define a table which will be cached underscore data. That will be the core table for all players' data, like for all players in the game. And we need to remove the players' cached data from the table when the player leaves. So first of all, let's write a function to get player data. Now I'll define it using user ID. Actually, let's get rid of that because this is going to be an internal function. So you can see it provides the user ID. So this will return the data store the data store for that player. Get data store. We'll name it data underscore toString user ID. So now this will be used to get the data store. If I will name this get player data store. So this will return the player's data store by their user ID, because you don't want to use the player's name when saving data, because their user ID never changes, but obviously the name can change. So you never want to save using a username. So now let's write our first function for this library. We'll name it get player data, and we'll use the player. So that will also be the player instance of the player trying to get the data of. So if cached underscore data player is not nil, then return cached underscore data player end. So if the data of a player is still in there, then it will basically return that. So you're probably a bit confused here because it's getting the player data, but if you were to return that, then it will just return the player data. There's no way to set it. This will actually return a custom class which will allow us to set, get and save. So here what we'll do is we'll make the class, so we'll give it a few predefined values. Saved underscore data, so that's its internal data table. Just turn that off, sorry. And then once we have that, we can do something along the lines of has data been edited, false. So this means that if you were to get a value or set a value, actually no, just set a value, then it will set this to true. So if it's already been saved, because this gets set back to false every time it's been saved. So it's just a nice little measure that you can add. And we'll have their, actually no, we don't need to have their player in there because that's the cache data index is their player object itself, so we don't need to do that. Now function new get key. So now if you were to get a value, you can see it would have their saved data here. So return saved actually no, new dot saved underscore data key. So then this is our get function, so we can basically get a value in their data table. Function new set key value. This is our setting function. So new dot saved underscore data key equals value, and we don't need to return anything for this. Function new save. Now this will yield, which means it will pause the current thread until this function is finished. It saves the player's current data to the data store. So what will change here actually is get player data store player.userid get async data, or an empty table. Because if it's nil, then it will be nil and it won't be a table, so I need to make sure that it's actually a table. Now to save it, well, we could actually prevent the get data store calls. We'll call ds equals get player data store. So then we just have a variable for it. So now ds sets async data new dot saved underscore data. So now if you were to say set get no, if you were to set a value in the saved data, then save it, it would obviously save that table which you just edited, which is good. So what we need to do actually is new dot has data been edited equals false, and new dot has data been edited equals true. So this basically reduces the amount of calls that you have to do, and overall reduces delay, basically reduces the amount of time it takes to save everyone's data, because some players might have had their data changed, so thus it's basically just saving pre-existing data, which is literally the exact same. So if new dot has data been edited, then return end. So if not new has data been edited. Okay, so that is our data class. Now, cached underscore data player equals new. So now, this is our class. So if we were to get the player's data, then it would return either a new class or the current cached class. So don't need to remake it every single time. So now, in the server, we'll require the data module. We'll call it data module, because require game get service server storage wait for child data module. There we go. So now, one thing we can actually do is add a new function as well, called function new update key update function. So for any of you that already have experience with DataStores, you'll know that there's a update async function in DataStores that allow you to, basically it works like this. So you would go new update, and then you'd save a key, so for example cache, where you define a function with the variable old. So basically what this means is you could define a function to handle the data. So old, so local new equals old or 0, new equals new plus 5, return new. So this would see if the old value exists, or so new would be old or 0, then new would be new plus 5, and it would return that, and that would be the value, and they'll be set in the data store. So it's a pretty good function to use because, well, that means you don't need to do get and then set as well, because if you're using just the default data store for that, then it would be very request heavy. So it's better to use update or update async. So what we'll do here is we will do new dot saved underscore data key equals update function new dot saved underscore data key. So it's basically sets it to whatever this function returns, provided with the old value. So now that we've done that, we can also, with this, return new.saved underscore data key. So it'll return the new value as well. Okay, so now we've defined the data module in the server. We can do local player data equals data module gets player data player. Which you can see. We could just actually return this function, but if you want to add anything else to it, it'd be better to just use it like this. Now player data update cache function old local new equals old or 0, new equals new plus 5, return new. So now that would update their cache to basically the old value plus 5, and if old is nil, then it will set it to 0. So now we need to find a way of telling the client that their data has been updated. Now we could just use a remote function for this and then basically just return a new cache value, but what if it gets updated by some other kind of way of updating it? So for example, if the server were to add it itself, instead of doing this method of pressing the button. For example, if it's to sell an item. So what we could do is we could create, actually no, we don't even need to create a new event, we can just fire the client through this event. So event fire client player cache updated, and here's where the return value from update comes in. Local new cache value equals player data update, and then cache updated new cache value. Now I'm going to set up the clients, so event.on client event connect function tuple local data equals if data 1 equals, let's see, what do we have it as? Cache updated, then GUI.cache.text equals, do some string formatting here, formats to string data2. So if we try this out now, I think I have DataStore enabled. As you can see, we can add more cache to our account. Now if you notice, the first one was slightly delayed. If I try that again, you can see I had a slight delay because it was getting the data store for the first time. So what could we do to prevent that? What we could do is game.players.player added connect function player, and then what we could do is data module get player data player. So this means if the player hasn't joined the server before, it will pre-create their data class. So if we try this now, it's instant, which is very good. But now our data module needs to save it. So what we'll actually do first is if game get service run service is client, then return an empty table. So you can see here in Studio, the server will always think that it's the server. If the server's that it will always think that the server is the client. So what we'll do is if game run service is client and game get service run service is Studio and not Studio, then return empty brackets. So now it will check that it's for, if it's for client, and it will return nothing, but it will also check to see if it's not in Studio, because of course Studio will always be the client unless you start a server here, I believe. Anyway, so now the cache of the player gets updated when they press the button, but their data doesn't save unless of course we call this function. So we'll create a constant up here, local autosave time equals 60. So this is the time in seconds that it will autosave the data. So what we'll do is we'll spawn a function, spawn function, while true do, wait autosave time, then for player data class in pairs cached underscore data do. So now it will wait the autosave time, go through all the data in the cache data table, and then data class save. Simple as that, autosave done. So what we'll actually do while we're here is we will get rid of this line and put it in here. So we'll just change that. Perfect. Now game.players.player removing connect function player local data class. Actually no, what we can do is just cached underscore data player save and cached underscore data player equals nil. So it will save the data and then remove the cached data from the table, because of course the players left the game. There's no use for their data in there anymore. Now, one final thing that we'll need to add before this is perfect is we need to add a system that will save the data when the game closes. So game bind to close function. So this function will run as the server's ending when all the players have left the game. So we'll basically do the same thing as the autosave for player data class in pairs cached underscore data, do data class save, and then that's it. What we could do is we could add a wait of 5 seconds just in case, make sure that it fully saves, and then that after this wait the server can finally close properly. So now if we were to play, get ourselves say up to 15 cash, stop, you can see it acts as if it was frozen for a few seconds, and then play again. Now it appears it didn't save properly, so that's odd. What we'll do is we'll go to server, we'll debug this. So if we comment this out, +5 cash, stop, and check again, as you can see it saved this time. So that is odd. Why did it do that? Or did I just mistype it? So let's have a look. Data module. Try something else. If new has data been entered equals false. Let's try that. Wait, I know why. I almost missed that. What we did was we forgot to add it here. New.has data been edited equals true. There we go, that should be fixed now. That was close. So now we'll add one last thing to the server. Game.players.player added connect function player. We'll add a wait of 1 second when the player first joins the server, so that the data module can load in the player data. Well, actually, I don't think we need to do that. We'll try it out without it. So then, actually no, we should add a wait because the client might have not been fully loaded yet. Event fire client player cache updated player data module get player data player gets cache. So we'll try this out now. See our cache gets updated on the client, and we can get +5 cache each time we press the button. Press stop. A little freeze there because of a wait 5 in the script, and as you can see, it's saved. So if you were to use this data module, you could use it for anything. You could save a table, so you could save, like, I don't know, weapon skins, or you could even, well, just save cache like I've done here. So this was just a little basic tutorial. I managed to spun on for about 24 minutes, which is a bit long, but I do like to spend time explaining what each and everything does. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. One final thing, if we're going to be testing it in Studio, then you'll need to enable Web API services to Studio. You need to enable that option. To do that, you need to go to your place, click Configure Game, not Configure Place, Configure Game, and then the first option should be Enable Web API Access to Studio, or something along those lines. I'm pretty tired. And then go back in Studio, and you should be able to access DataStores and other web-related APIs in Studio. So yeah, that is the video. Thank you all for watching, and if you guys want another video like this, make sure to tell me in the comments. I'd like to thank you all for your support on the last video that I did a while ago. It's a little experiment that I decided to do, and yeah, I like the support that I've been getting from it. So if you guys keep liking this series, then I might do more. So yeah, drop your suggestions in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.